Hello and welcome to CEVA Talks. My name is Des Blanchfield. I'm the CEO of a company called Sociaall. It is my honor and privilege to be the host of today's discussion around reverse logistics. Firstly, let me introduce CEVA Talks. CEVA Talks is a series of live discussions with leading experts and practitioners from the supply chain and logistics industry and beyond. Our aim is to share insights and best practices about topics in the logistics industry. CEVA Talks are also actually featured in the CEVA Insights Logistics Thought Leadership magazine. Today's topic is, as I mentioned, focused around reverse logistics in the e-commerce world, and particularly we're going to be looking at new trends and best practices. There's no surprise that the steady increase in e-commerce and rising demand from consumers and customers for fast delivery and sustainable efforts around the space have forced established players to launch new innovative business models. Today, I'll be discussing topics around the space, and particularly the management challenges of reverse logistics. Our aim today is to share practical, real-world insights on best practices and thoughts around how to optimize reverse logistics processes.
Hi, Des. Nice to be here, and hello, everyone. My name is Ella, as already said. I represent CEVA Logistics, and as such, I have spent roughly last 8 years serving several e-commerce fashion brands to implement, manage, and develop returns and refurbishment processes in Europe. We run our biggest return centers in Poland and in Switzerland, also in Germany, and a couple of smaller hubs through Europe. Altogether, in the peak season, we would process more than 10 million items for returns for all the customers. So I would say I have managed to gather quite an experience within the field.
Indeed, you have quite an astounding career, and congratulations on all of that. I'm really looking forward to the insights and information you can share today. So why don't we just dive straight in, Ella? Could you maybe just start us with an introduction to what reverse logistics management encompasses, and particularly in the e-commerce fashion sector, and what are the ingredients for a successful reverse supply chain?
Well, for us as 3PL, the process starts at the moment of a return parcel being delivered to our premises. And what it takes for us is to evaluate the content of the parcel, to assess the state of the items, to process it for a return. So, of course, the customer can receive the refund. And also we have to later prepare the items so they can be brought back on stock. And that includes all the necessary activities such as folding or repacking according to the standards of a respective e-com. And however, the process itself starts when we have the parcel actually in our hands. Everything really starts with us when we have to plan for the future. So it starts with the forecast. And you can imagine, it can be sometimes difficult to assist, as it is highly dependable on, first of all, sales, but then also, of course, in the behavior of an individual buyer. For those reasons, successful reverse supply chain needs to be flexible and scalable, but at the same time, it has to be data-driven, based on a careful observation and analysis of customer behaviors, which will be very often specific to the niche or to the actual part of the industry that the e-com has conquered. So on average, we would expect that for fashion, there would be around 50% of returns of the items that have been sold. Nevertheless, it would depend on the niche, as I said. So, for example, there will be difference in both amounts and quality of the items that are being returned. Should an e-shop be selling solely female fast fashion items, or if there would be an e-commerce shop that would be selling mostly male premium brands. As we know, females and males usually have different tendencies. And for example, male customer, male buyer would rather tend to return less And the quality of items would be also, of the returned items would be better, because they tend to treat the items that they have bought slightly differently.
Indeed, there's a lot to delve into there. One of the things that immediately comes to mind, though, is that, Ella, there's this view that technology is a major enabler of reverse logistics. In your experience, though, what is the reality on the ground of a return center? What should we take into consideration when setting up a reverse logistics process around this space?
Well, the technology, of course, is in the current world a key to everything, I would say, including returns. And you can boost both data collection and productivities via, for example, RFIDs, RFID tags, inbound scanning, automating sorting, even automating packaging and labeling, depending on the individual standards of a certain e-com. Nevertheless, when it comes to an actual assessment of an item, a human factor is the most important and would be extremely difficult to replace by an artificial intelligence. A person, an actual human, needs to use all of his senses to evaluate the quality of the product. He needs to see it, touch it, even smell it sometimes, especially with fashion, to evaluate whether it was maybe worn, maybe washed. You cannot really avoid, neither replace the human factor within reverse logistics.
One of the biggest topics that comes up in this space, of course, is sustainability, and you're no stranger to that, particularly in the last 2.5 years as a result of the pandemic, but certainly even prior to that, leading up to the end of 2019. It seems that data shows that online purchases are returned twice as much as in-store purchases. What solutions do you propose that your clients look to make these operations less polluting?
Well, first of all, I feel like online returns being more polluting than offline ones is one of the myths that needs to be debunked. While yes, it is true that a customer is likely to buy more and return more online, sending a parcel off to be transported with a range of other returns on the same vehicle will in many cases generate less carbon footprint than it would should you just take off your own car and drive that one individual parcel back to the shop or to some kind of a drop-off. And secondly, for us as a 3PL, the responsibility that lays on us is to actually make sure that there is as little waste generated from returns as possible for the benefit of both our customer and the planet. In regards for waste generated from returns, there would be two factors to consider. First is the packaging itself. Here, the more sustainable and reusable the packaging is, the better, of course. We would both gather and provide the information on how the packaging is actually working out, and also to help while looking for better solutions and testing the ones that a customer wants to implement. The second factor is, of course, and this is the most talked about, I guess, and this is the waste of the garment itself, due to it being damaged in any way, or maybe in some cases even not damaged at all, but in regards for saving the cost of going through the whole process of evaluation, etc. As already said, what we do, we actually evaluate every item to carefully check whether it can be sold again as a quality item or not. But with our experience, we also already know that up to 5% of the returned fashion items are defective, with the defects originating from either manufacturer himself already or the customer. What we do, we advise and assist our customers in tailoring to measure refurbishment services and making sure that we repair and or clean as many of those items as possible so it can be brought to a good and resellable condition. It may not be as successful, of course, in some cases, and in some cases it may not be even possible, but then still it would be our responsibility to evaluate what is the actual state of the item, so in what kind of other secondary channels it could be still sold, so it's not going to be wasted.
With the sustainability topic, if we can just stay on that for a moment, we're seeing some marketplaces are implementing programs to incite customers to be more mindful about their purchases and thus their returns, and consider the impact of those returns. What useful data or information with regard to the decision-driven or data-driven decision-making you referred to before do you bring to your clients, and how do you help them tailor those offers to inform the consumers in particular to hopefully make better decisions about what they do return?
Well, since we are the actual link in between the buyer and the customer, as we have in our hands the actual proof of how the customer is behaving and how what is the quality of the items that are sold, everything related to the behavior is a knowledge that we can and we are responsible to deliver to our customers. If there is any suspicious or even shady behavior of a customer, we are the ones who can spot it and report it to the customer so they can react accordingly, not in regards for that particular buyer. That's of course up to the e-com to decide, but also to prevent such situations in the future on a larger scale. Furthermore, we deliver, especially for the customers, we do refurbishment services, information in regards for the quality of items and the fabric themselves, what are the most reasons for damages or defects, so they can resolve the issues further on with the suppliers, for example. And as said before, feedback in regards for packaging materials, the processes overall being effective or not really, etc., etc. So really, every information about whatever is happening within our operations is going to be useful for a store.
Indeed, and the better informed your customers are, the better they can make decisions, and then hopefully look for ways to reduce some of those challenges, and also ensure they're retaining good profitability and flowing that on in value and pricing to consumers. One question that has come in, Ella, if I could maybe just pose it to you, with regard to what you were just talking about there, do you have any data that shows that there may be any cultural differences per country in returns in one region or another, or even one nation? Is there any data insights that is standing out at the moment that sort of gives you a sense that one particular region of the world is better or worse at this whole challenge of what they're returning and how much, or is it a global thing in general?
Well, since we are operating in Europe and our reverse logistics chain is concentrated here, I would not be able to compare it with other regions. Nevertheless, we can even see the differences in between the countries. So since we are getting returns from all around Europe and it's being steered quite efficiently, sometimes what happens is that you have to redirect the stream of returns from a particular country to another due to different reasons, COVID being one of it in the past. You get instantly, or mostly our operators on the floor get instantly the difference in between the quality of the items or the parcels that are being returned. So they can see within their hands that the customers from a particular country would treat or would tend to behave towards the items that they are buying and returning, hoping to get their money back in a different way. What we can see that, for example, Scandinavian countries are not that careful with the Scandinavian customers are not that careful with the items that they are obtaining from the customer. So usually we have a little bit of more work with those items to bring them back to the good shape.
Interesting. A lot of what we're talking about here is what is often referred to as circular business models. I wonder, how can logistics suppliers address the growing number of circular business models that they're seeing, and in particular, what are the trends that you're observing, especially in a couple of areas that you talked about, such as the e-commerce fashion sector?
Well, first of all, my prediction is that even though the overall number of returns will be growing because the online sales will be growing itself, so the overall number will be growing. Nevertheless, I do think, and I also actually a little bit hope, since I'm very well, the sustainability topics are very close to my heart. I do hope, and my bosses may not be overly happy about it, but I do hope that the percentages of the of returns will be lower. But still, since the business in general is growing, and we do see the overall trend into redirecting our food rather to online shops instead of offline stores, we will still get a lot of returns in the future. But I'm just hoping that the overall percentage from the sales will be less. But then the other trends that we are also observing, that it was also somehow mentioned already during the conversation, is first of all for the brands or marketplaces, e-commerce stores, to actually educate and interact with their customers and to try to make them behave in a more responsible way, which would be both beneficial for them financially, but in general for the planet. And then also all the refurbishment services that we do, we actually see a bigger and bigger demand for those. A couple of years ago, we would not get as much or as many questions from the customers to actually offer such services. Right now, it's becoming pretty much a standard for an e-com to think about that kind of things.
If you were to bullet point just a number as a percentage, what in your mind is an acceptable percentage of returns, in particularly in the fashion and apparel e-commerce space? When's the tipping point that organizations and companies in that space, the retail space, should be worrying, if you were to just to pick a number, a particular percentage?
Well, I said pretty much at the beginning of the conversation, I guess, that the standard is actually around 50%. So if you are getting over 50, then you should be worried about your costs. But of course, it will always depend on the niche or on the assortment that the customers that our customer has to deal with.
Right. To wrap us up, let me give you one final question I can with regard to just a little bit of crystal ball gazing, future trends, as you were. Keeping in mind the trends that we knew about in the pre-COVID era, what do you think will shape the future of reverse logistics? What does 2023 and onwards look like in your mind, to wrap us up?
Well, somehow we tackled that one a little bit. So less returns in percentage, I would say, more education on the way during the whole process. All the sustainability efforts that are currently already ongoing, getting even more deeper, including refurbishment services and circularity. And the circular business model is actually also something that we see growing, both demand and also willingness among our customers to actually get involved within such. And then there's also automation. Try to, I already said that this is not possible to automate everything, and the most important part of the process is not likely to be ever automated. And nevertheless, there are little parts of the process that we can automate, because of course, what is currently happening with the economy and the political situation, we do have to be a little bit more careful in regards how much we are dependable on the human labor. So if there are little parts that we can exchange human factor, that is going to be helpful in the future, and I think that this is the trend that the industry will go for.
Fantastic. Well, Ella, it's been an absolute pleasure to spend some time with you. Amazing to learn a bit more about your role as the head of project administration there at CEVA Logistics. Folks, thank you so much for making time to join us today as part of the CEVA Talks, the ongoing series of live discussions with leading experts and practitioners from the supply chain and logistics industry. My name is Des Blanchfield. We're going to wrap up now. Really appreciate you joining us in this discussion. Please do join the conversation online through LinkedIn and Twitter, and follow Eva and the rest of the team and CEVA themselves, CEVA Logistics, and we'll look forward to you posting any further questions online there. I'm Des Blanchfield. It's been a pleasure to spend some time with you. We'll see you at the next CEVA Talks. Have a great day.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.